Welcome to the Therate podcast. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Katie.
And we are here to provide a therapist's perspective on Taylor's musical mental health themes. It's a deeper kind of Swiftie conversation. I'm Ashley, and I am a mental health therapist in the Midwest. And I graduated with a Master of Science in Clinical Mental Health Counseling with an emphasis in Christian counseling. And I typically work with people who have anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation. And then I also use cognitive behavior therapy and emotion-focused therapy the majority of the time. What about you, Katie? Let's hear about you.
Yeah, so I also have a master's degree in clinical mental health therapy, and my specialization is trauma. So I really enjoy working with people who have developmental trauma in particular. So growing up in a home that just really wasn't supportive, and just like some difficult things happening in early childhood that we find carry over into adulthood. Also work with couples. I really love somatic therapy work. So that's basically identifying where trauma lives in our body and then how do we like release that through body work in addition to that cognitive verbal processing. Um, so that's a little bit about my specialty. Kind of what has made me a Swiftie is, well, ever since Taylor Swift began publishing music, essentially back in what, 2009, I was really captured by her songs Teardrops on My Guitar. I think was probably one of like the first songs that I heard and like really loved and really connected with. And I've been a fan since that point. Um, Ashley, what has made you a Swiftie?
Well, we have similar origin stories as far as our Swiftyhood. I remember being in like middle school and hearing Teardrops on My Guitar and just being like, oh my goodness, she's speaking to me. Even though, like, middle school Ashley, what in the world did you have going on that made you feel all of those feelings? I don't know, but she was so relatable to me, and I've followed her career ever since. But the thing that really made me a Swiftie, like the next level, the hardcore Swiftie that I am today, was
Mhm.
COVID because I was working from home and I was an administrative assistant at the time. And I decided, why not just look at every single YouTube video or interview that she's ever had while I'm
Why
working?
not?
Why not? So I wanted to know all of the details about all of these like scandals that I had heard about before, like the Kanye stuff and everything.
Mhm.
So I just decided to learn about her and loved her even more after that. So, yeah, I would love to hear, Katie, what song has been on repeat for you lately.
Ooh, what song has been on repeat? Honestly, TTPD, but specifically from that, I have been listening to So Long London a lot on repeat recently, which I'm very excited to get into that because I know we'll be covering one that song in particular. Your face actually says it all. So that's probably what's been on repeat for me.
I was going to say the same one. I'm
No,
shocked that we match.
we do.
Yeah, yeah. So Long London is, yeah, a go-to for me right now. Absolutely. Her voice, we can get into it later. It's so good.
Ashley, maybe
Uh,
our listeners would love to hear a little bit about how we met.
I think that's a great idea. So, like I said, I started out as an admin a couple of years ago before I was a counselor. And Katie and I worked at the same practice. And we just happened to be, talking about the music that was happening at the office. And maybe if we were to have control over the music, what would we choose? And do you remember what happened after that, Katie?
Yeah, you said Taylor Swift, and I was like, "Oh, you're into Taylor Swift." And I didn't like comment on it at that moment, but I circled back in my mind and said, "I need to follow up with her." So it was like a couple days later, I said, "Ashley, when you said that you enjoyed listening to Taylor Swift, like what level of Taylor Swift are we talking about?" Are you like a casual listener or are you like hardcore? And then you just like looked at me, like looked down and up and was like, um,
It was after COVID, so I had done all of the deep dives and I was in. I was in. So I was like, I don't think you're prepared for this conversation, Katie. I don't know anybody who's prepared for this conversation because we have gone down some significant rabbit holes.
I was prepared.
You were, and that has been the start of a beautiful friendship. We've gone camping and listened to
Hmm.
new albums. We have had amazing conversations in our counseling offices about our thoughts on Taylor Swift and how mental health is included in them. And finally, we decided, you know what? I think it would be time for a podcast because these conversations are super fun to have.
Yes. And Ashley, that was all your idea. It was the best idea. Did not take a lot for me to get on board with that. And really, as we discussed what this podcast would be about, we kind of recognized that we really wanted to kind of blend our two loves, one mental health and the other being um, Taylor Swift, and what could that look like? So we decided that our podcast would include some fangirling because that's so fun to do, and there's so many good things that happens in Taylor's life that are fun to talk about. But really, we wanted our podcast to focus on this beautiful intersection between mental health and her music. So if you, as our listener, are sitting there going, "I don't know a lot of the lore, I don't know the history," that's okay. We have specifically ensured that this podcast is something that everybody could listen to and enjoy, even if you don't know all of that. We'll fill you on like certain details if it's pertinent to what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I think the same would go for mental health. Like a big passion of both of ours is education on psychology and counseling and mental health in general. So we're also going to try to do our best to make this accessible for people who maybe don't know the terms that we typically use on a daily basis too. So what we think this is going to look like is doing it album by album. We're each going to choose 3 songs. And we're going to dive into the mental health themes on those songs and ask ourselves, if this song were a person walking into our office, what would we say? We have things we want to validate, things we want to encourage. Basically, we're counseling the song, but we are not counseling Taylor or anybody who relates to that song in particular. This is our take as counselors on the song. This does not necessarily mean that it's advice for you specifically.
Correct. Yeah, it's not therapy. It's a fun conversation, and we hope that you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else you feel like our listeners need to know, Katie?
Yeah, if there's a song that we cover in our podcast, um, that you really enjoyed, we'd love to hear it. Please send us a DM, send us an email. We'll include all that information in the bio. And then you can also message us to request a song to cover if it's not one of the ones that we picked.
Yes, I'm so excited about that. I hope we get some requests.
Everyone, thank you so much for listening. We're so happy you're here. Join us as we dive next into TTPD.
And if you want to follow us, we have an Instagram account. Our Instagram is Therate Podcast. And then you can email us at theratepodcast@gmail.com. And I also want to shout out Jeremy for editing this podcast for us.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Bye.